Welcome back to Pain to Power PT. I'm Dr. Ronnie, and today I'm going to be talking about community. So, people with chronic pain and chronic conditions often feel very isolated, and there's a few reasons for that. One, just being the nature of having a disease or a condition itself, in that it is isolating. It is othering by its nature that you have it and other people don't. And even if other people in your life maybe do have a chronic condition, the likelihood of it being the exact same thing is unlikely, as well as the way that they experience it. So even if they did have the exact same diagnosis as you, the chances of experiencing it the same way are going to be very slim. So the other thing is that it really consumes your life. The process of managing, the process of diagnosing, if you even have a diagnosis, can be very time consuming. And the time that it takes you away from other things, like community, is very isolating. Then one of the major things, though, also is that it limits our function. So limits in function lead to limitations in participation. Oftentimes people who have limited function don't know how to participate in things that they used to participate in. So for example, if you used to be a part of a community, maybe you were a runner, and now you have an injury or a chronic condition, something that prevents you from running and being a part of that community anymore. Maybe you don't feel welcome there anymore, or you don't feel like you fit in anymore. So that also can affect our sense of self, which can lead to issues with depression, anxiety, and that leads to further isolation. So it really creates this vicious cycle of isolation over time. And then finally, sometimes it can just be our own self-limiting behaviors that we have gotten so far into it that we just don't know how to get out. And we perform these kinds of behaviors or attitudes that actually further limit us beyond what our physical limitations may be. So we're feeling isolated. We're feeling like there's nowhere we belong anymore. And that's really common. You may think, okay, the old me used to be a runner, a hiker, a biker, a firefighter, an active parent, or the go-to friend, the fixer. And now maybe you can't be exactly those things like you were anymore. And you feel like you just don't belong anywhere. And the current me maybe says, well, now I'm shoved into this group that I don't even want to be a part of. Now some of the language that I have heard from clients commonly is, I am now a part of this group of 6 sad people. And that's not what I signed up for. That's not what I want to be. I don't want to define myself that way. I don't want to be a part of that group. And that's where I see a lot of resistance in people joining groups. And I don't blame them at all, because what that can definitely be the mindset of certain groups that, I've heard often that they don't like joining support groups because they're a pity party. And that could be a mindset of a group. We all, I'm sure, have experienced times when either we were part of a group or we saw another person part of a group that negatively affected them, that either there were kind of negative people in the group, or it was kind of a bad crowd, or the mindset there just wasn't one that fosters positive things. So we all know that there are bad groups out there and that they don't help us. But the opposite is also true. There is a ton of research about positive groups and making positive changes, and that we are able to make really excellent progress in a group, sometimes better than we are alone, oftentimes better than we are alone, because being in a group and being in a community is very powerful. But the difference is that it takes directed action. And unless you're lucky enough to just sort of fall into a group of great people, you may have to create these groups yourself. And you have to be deliberate in your actions in these groups. So in order for a group to be good, it has to have a clear culture. And to give you kind of an example, in my groups that I lead, I always set out in trying to make a very clear culture of growth. And this is established on day one. So I often say that my groups aren't support groups, they're action groups. We are not trying to support a disease or condition. We are trying to grow and move forward and make progress in our lives instead of sort of supporting like a current state. So, and how do I do this? So I usually start out with the right people. So that is something when you're joining a group or looking at a group to start a group. Are the people there the kinds of people that share your values? Do they want to be there at all? I have definitely been a part of groups and had groups where people just, maybe there's a person that just really doesn't want to be there. They feel like maybe they should be there, or someone sort of forced them to be there in some way, and their heart really isn't in it. It's not where they want to be. So having the right people who want to be there and who are ready to move forward with you. And then also having clear boundaries and expectations. So this is something that I do on day one of every group. And we do this together. We set our group values, we set our focus, and we also talk about what's not acceptable in the group. What is something that we're not going to do, or many things maybe that we're not going to do. So then the next one is gentle accountability. So after we've set these sort of boundaries and guidelines for our participation in the group, the way we talk and act to each other, it's important to keep ourselves accountable, but we also have to be gentle in that. It's more of a reminder about what we've talked about rather than like a scolding or something like that. That's not helpful, right? So we want to gently remind ourselves and others what is our purpose, what are our values, why are we here, and while still allowing room for grace, because change is not linear. So we are absolutely going to fall back into old habits. Sometimes they may be ugly habits that we don't like, that other people don't like, but we have to remember that people don't change overnight, and we're going to have flare-ups. We're going to have those little things, those little bumps in the road where things aren't going to look pretty. And we have to be gentle with those things and remember and give each other grace. And then lastly is confidentiality and vulnerability. You could have one without the other, but why would you want to? So you can have confidentiality with no vulnerability, but what would be the point? You would never get any kind of real, true connection. And you can have vulnerability without confidentiality. And then why would you want that? Why would you share something deep and precious or painful to yourself that someone else doesn't respect? So having that confidentiality and vulnerability together is really about building trust and connection with the people around you. So these are what I tend to focus on in a group, but these can be applied to any of your relationships. So whether with your friends or your family, kind of having those clear boundaries is really important. Sharing yourself with people who have shared goals, and then maybe having stricter boundaries with people who don't. So they can be used, these strategies can be used anywhere to really foster a sense of belonging somewhere. And if you are looking for a group where you could belong and a community, I would love to have you join my community. We would welcome you there. And my little announcement that I announced on social media, I'm actually going to announce a little day early right here. So if you're listening, you are probably the first to hear it. My new cohort of the Path to Resilience group is going to be starting in April. So I am accepting people into that now. I have 8 slots available. So if you're interested in joining a community like this, of people who are ready for growth, who want to make real connections and are ready to move forward with their life, I really hope that you can come join us. I will put a link in the description below about how you can get started. Every group begins with some one-on-one time with me where we can talk about your goals and your journey, where you started, where you are, where you want to go, and really make sure that we are all a good fit for each other, that this is something that you want. So we always start with that. And I would love to welcome you in. And in the meantime, go ahead and comment below. Maybe what are some of your struggles and some of your successes with community and being in groups. And as always, let me know what you want to hear more about. All right, see you next time.